Hi and welcome to another video from the CTAD Clinic. My name's Dr. Mike Lloyd and I'm the Clinic Director. In today's video we're going to be looking at the importance of timing in dissociation. So this is working out like how timing operates and the importance and the what we have to consider when we're taking into account how much time we actually have. So what I'm going to be looking at with this is thinking about the way that dissociation operates and the way that the brain manifests dissociation as a defensive response and the amount of time it takes that it's likely to do that and how much time a person might have in order to be able to make it not happen, because ultimately that's the goal, is to sort of prevent unwanted dissociative experiences or systems taking place. So we're thinking about timing and defensive systems. We have to try and understand how quickly the brain operates. And when we look into the science of this, it's actually outstandingly fast, and it needs to be. So this is starting in a situation that would not be considered to be an active, hostile or threatening type environment. So this is different from, say, a soldier in a war zone that is expecting something to happen. So we're just wandering through life and we're not expecting anything to happen, but our brain is constantly on the alert for something that it might need to respond to. And this is called our instinctual response. So our instinct is to protect ourselves from danger at any point, at any time. So the classic example is, say, walking through a park or on a street and a ball is thrown at your head and you sort of see the ball arriving and you duck out of the way. That's not a thought through response, that's an instinctive response. And the time it takes to do that is about 1/10 of a second, which is a really quick amount of time, and it has to be, because if you stop and think, you look at the ball and you go, oh, that's a ball, and bang, it hits you on the head and it's already too late. So you don't think a ball is coming towards you, you just see something coming in your peripheral vision. Your vigilance takes that into account, the ball arrives and you sort of duck out of the way, and that takes place in in about 1/10 of a second. So it's super quick and it's designed to stop you being hurt. So the brain doesn't want you to be hurt, creates this instinctive response, gets you out of trouble. It's our knee-jerk reaction, if you like. That's another way of looking at it. Now, if we think that that's a defensive system, we also think that dissociation is a defensive system. So the speed at which the brain brings out a defensive system is super fast, and it occurs faster than the speed of thought. That's how we want to look at this. And it makes a difference if we're prepared. So, for example, a goalkeeper who's about to try and save a penalty in a World Cup final is super prepared. So the goalie's standing at the goal, he can see the person about to take the kick, he completely understands the context, he knows what's going on, or she knows what's going on, and their reaction time is about as fast as it could possibly be. And they've got to be able to move by the time the ball is kicked before the ball gets over the line. So that reaction time, very trained, very prepared, very practiced. We're looking at at best about 1/4 to 1/3 of a second. So that's how fast that the goalkeeper has to respond. So when the ball is kicked, they've got about a very small amount of time before the ball crosses the line in order to save it, which is why many goals don't get saved in World Cup finals. So here we have that. Here we have this situation. So if we're really prepared and we know that something's going to happen, our reaction time can be about 1/4 to 1/3 of a second. But in real life, we're not prepared. We're walking through normal situations, not in active hostile situations, and events can take place. And this would be called the trigger event. So you're minding your own business, you're walking through life, and suddenly something happens, like a shout from the other side of the road, and we respond very quickly. We kind of jump. This is especially true for people who have complex trauma or PTSD. So that traumatized sense of self takes place and plays itself out in a hyper-vigilant, hyper-alert type place. So the person is constantly on the alert for something. So a shout happens, that creates a startle response. That startle response is picked up by the brain within 1/10 of a second and can lead to dissociation taking place. So the shout occurs, the brain goes, something's happening, need to respond. Best way of responding is dissociate. That can effectively turn the person off, cause a switch, lead to some sort of event taking place that the person is then not in control of. And what we want to try and create is a scenario whereby the person who is dissociative may well be hyper alert and hyper vigilant, but has time to be able to take control. Now this would be called mastery, and this is what a concept that I really like working with the people in our clinical practice for, is to try and gain mastery over the dissociation. We can't necessarily stop the brain from wanting to dissociate if that's part of its pathway, its defensive system that's potentially built in for years and years and years, but we can have mastery over it. And this would be known as what I would be thinking of as a thoughtful response. So the instinctive get out of the way of the cricket ball is a reaction. The do I need to do anything here? Am I actually okay? Is a response. It's thoughtful. It's a cognitive process. So the brain's instinctive reaction is a biological process. Our ability to determine whether we're actually in threat or not, that shout from the other side of the street, is it just someone calling their mate? Nothing to do with me, nothing to be worried about. I've no need to dissociate whatsoever. Therefore, I don't have to dissociate. I'm telling the brain I don't need to dissociate. That takes time. I reckon, generally speaking, I'm looking at, say, between 2 and 5 seconds to be able to construct a sense of what's going on, to be able to make a choice and determine whether or not dissociation is necessary. And that's like a golden window, if you like, to be able to say to the brain, I don't need to dissociate. That shout, nothing to do with me. I'm not in any danger. I'm not in threat. Therefore, I have no need to dissociate and I'm going to be okay. It doesn't seem like an awful lot of time, does it? 2 seconds, 3 seconds. But to the brain, 2 or 3 seconds is a huge amount of time. The brain is looking at this going, those 2 or 3 seconds is the difference between life or death if it's in a threat response type system. So 1/10 of a second to the brain is what it takes to try and keep you alive. 2 to 3 seconds is time to actually think. Mastery is gained in those 2 to 3 seconds. That's not where it's practiced. It's practiced, I think, in the therapy room, and this is very much a therapeutic skill that can be learned by people, and we know it's possible to extend the time between the trigger and the potential for dissociation happening because we see this in our clinical practice. We work with our patients, our clients, and we extend the time between a trigger and a dissociative event so that the person can take charge and make a decision. And that decision is effectively, I don't need to dissociate, therefore I'm not going to dissociate. And that actually becomes something that a person can make a decision about. Now, for people that don't have this at all, it can seem like this is some sort of magical weird thing, but it is simply a skill. It's a technique learned through therapeutic work in order to be able to gain mastery over the dissociation. So the therapist would work with the patient initially to determine the way that's done that. It's a very individual process. It's very much based on what each and every individual is working on and how they are approaching events, triggers, and the dissociative toolkit, but it can be done. So really what this video is about is helping you all understand, so therapists and people with dissociation like, that we're looking at biological processes and we're trying to make them into thoughtful processes. So dissociation doesn't have to be something that is inevitable. It ends up being something that you can start working alongside to make a choice or a decision about whether dissociation is needed or not. And that comes down to the sense of whether you actually feel safe or whether you feel that you are in threat and something's happening. So it's an override, if you like, of the natural biological impulse to protect. We're overriding saying, I don't need to protect, therefore I don't need the dissociation. And this is something that takes quite a lot of time, which is why a lot of this work is long-term therapy, but it absolutely can be done. So this is why I think of timing as being very important. There's a whole ton of stuff about dissociation, which is massively relevant, but timing is a thing. The speed at which something happens, it's really useful for us as therapists to know what that time scale is like in order to be able to start influencing it and start working with the person to extend that time as much as possible. And the longer you extend it for, simply is the longer time you've got to make decisions about how to respond, and you don't rely on reaction in order to save the day. I hope this has been helpful. Obviously, do all the usual stuff, like and subscribe, and please feel free to share it with people as and when you see fit. It's really great that people are doing that. Leave comments in the section as always, and we'll have a look at those and respond to the ones that we can. And yeah, hopefully that this kind of gives you a different appreciation for the importance of a 1 second or a 2 second or a 3 second, because they're massive times Not for us in everyday life, but for our brain, 1, 2, 3 seconds is hugely important. So thank you very much for watching this video. Obviously do all the usual kind of stuff, and we'll keep producing content from the clinic. And in between now and the next video, please do take great care.